Hey, what's up, Internet? Long time no see. It is finally the 7th. The day is upon us. We have the new expansion and the new League trailer. And I'm ready for this, It feels like this, with the Cyberpunk delay. I think everybody's kind of eager to get into the new League finally. And there's a lot to go over. This is actually a way bigger expansion than I expected. They mentioned that they were going to be more conservative, I guess, after Heist, but it really feels like they went pretty hard on this one. It looks pretty juicy. I should mention before I even get started on this, one of the things that I've done since I last uploaded was I got a Demigod's Authority out of the Mayhem race, which is pretty cool. I don't think I'll do that again. It cost me a little bit too much sleep to do this in Trade League, especially like as a solo player. But we did it, so we can say that we did it. As you can see, I got the 5th place for Hierophant, but the guy who was in 4th beat me by like 30 seconds. It was super close, but it was kind of locked in because the guy who was in 6th place kind of gave up at level 99. I was surprised that this looked so cool, though. I figured some people might want to see this thing. I figured they would save this kind of graphic for, like, MTX they would sell. But it's super cool looking. It's got this aura effect, which comes from the item rarity. And it's very glowy and very cool. And now it's just going to rot in standard because I can't take this with me into a new league. It also is kind of glowy, right? Like even in dark areas, it has its own light source. You can see it lighting up the back. But yeah, that was fun. I didn't really, because I played so much in Mayhem to do that, I didn't really do much in the Delve or the Flashback. But it's been good to have a little bit of break now before we get into this. Which, man, there is a lot to go over. I'm going to spare you the trailer just so we don't make this video insanely long. And apparently they linked to the Chinese trailer here. So there's two sides of this, right? With usually a December launch, we have an expansion which is going to go straight into the core game immediately. So even if you're playing in Standard, you're going to get the expansion stuff. And there's also a new Challenge League. So we should probably start with the expansion stuff first. And it's based around this character, the Maven, which obviously they don't explain much about her yet. But I guess the idea is that she's sort of like a very Shaper-esque character that comes out of nowhere from some other world, seeing all this stuff that we did on the Atlas. And gameplay-wise, I guess the idea is it's kind of an alternate progression for your Atlas that you do at the same time that you're doing the regular Atlas progression, right? So you do a map, and I guess you find her envoy, and he sends you to her little realm here. This little Watchstone, little looking, whatever you want to call this. And for her part specifically, I guess the idea is that by slaying 3 map bosses in the Maven's presence, you'll earn an invitation to a realm where she will request that you defeat those bosses simultaneously. And then you start adding more bosses, right? So you're choosing which map bosses you add to this mechanic. You basically if you watch the trailer, there's a little button you click on the Atlas device when you want to capture the boss of that map. So you can pick and choose which bosses you add. And then I guess after you do a 10 boss fight, you'll have the opportunity, however, you unlock that to fight her. And it does refer to her as the new Pinnacle boss, which I would guess means that she is probably going to be on the same tier as Awakener 8 Cyrus. That remains to be seen. But that's the impression that I get, because they also, down here you see they add a new Maven's Orb, which they said was sort of analogous to like the Awakener's Orb on that tier of rarity. But before we get to that, we should talk about this, which seems like the biggest chunk of the expansion, right? Like this seems like the real meat and potatoes of Echoes of the Atlas, which is all 8 regions of the map are going to have their own ascendancy tree, basically. and you earn points for those trees by running maps in the region, right? Like getting your Atlas completion done. Excuse me. So as you can see, the Ascendancy nodes themselves are going to modify different types of encounters that you can add to map devices, right? So here in Lex Proxima, it shows like Harvest, Delve, and Breach. Here's Glenot Cairns, and they show a bunch of examples here. So they've got like a Beyond skill tree. This one adds a 3% baseline Beyond to all maps in that region. This one basically makes it so that you summon more bosses, and the like summoning, the range of the portal is twice as large. So you're just going to get a lot more Beyond monsters. And they've got a Legion one here where this one here seems really powerful, right? They're twice as likely to include a general in a Legion, and if they do, it always includes both generals, and generals drop twice as many Timeless Splinters. Just from this one node. Like this one here gives you an additional 10% chance to even get a Legion on any map. So these things seem really powerful. I really like these incursion ones, actually. This one basically gives you a 50% chance to get 2 tiers of upgrades instead of 1 from 1 kill. And this one up here allows you to like keep your upgrade tier if you switch into a different room. So like let's say this procs right away and turns my, you know how some rooms don't have an architect at first and you have to choose and upgrade it to level 1. So this could jump it straight to level 2. But then the next time you run the incursion thing and you see, oh, now Vaults is the other room. Well, I'd rather have Vaults. Well, this allows you to keep the tier 2 you had and just switch over to Vaults directly instead of losing any progress. So this seems like you're going to be able to make some really juicy temples with this. And they've got some powerful strongbox stuff here. And now it looks like the skill trees are fixed. So like Lexijoris is always going to have that skill tree. I don't think that these are going to shuffle when the map shuffles, right? Like Glenot Cairns is just always going to have that skill tree, and it'll just depend on what maps they put in Glenot Cairns, next league or whatever. But the fact that they've done this as a skill tree means that they can tweak stuff further, right? They can always change these nodes or improve them, buff, nerf, etc. As another example of one here. This one, Lex Proxima apparently has Harvest, Delve, and Breach. And then one little Torment node. Which surprisingly doesn't seem that bad, right? Because there's that Sextant modifier that gives you, scarabs or jewels or something every time you kill a possessed monster. Or like the first X number of possessed monsters. Well, this guarantees that up to 20 rare monsters in the map are possessed. So every single map, 20 rares are going to have ghosts in them by default. So you can kind of do that stuff without the annoying like chasing ghosts around. So even the ghost one doesn't seem that bad. Obviously the Delve ones are going to be really big with people. The Breach ones actually seem pretty good. This gives you basically a bunch more chance to get bosses. And then the follow-up to that allows bosses to drop Breachstones directly. And they have a chance, as low as it is, to get upgraded. So you could just add these two, run breaches, and just start farming tons of Breachstones, right? And this one here just makes it more rewarding to even do 30% more monster density, 50% increased experience from breaches. So this is like adding value to even doing breach in the first place. The Harvest ones all seem really good. You'll want to watch the trailer. So they've implemented Harvest Core. So when you look at this thing and it says like harvest in areas have a 10% chance for the unchosen crop to not wilt. The way they've implemented harvest is that you're going to have X% chance to just randomly find a portal into the harvest garden. When you do that, there's no gardening for you to do really. There's just going to be like a set amount of sprinklers, and they're already going to have crops ready to go. And each sprinkler has 2 crops on it, like 2 little fields. And you're going to have to choose which field you actually want to keep. And as soon as you water that field, the other crop dies. So you're going to get 2 crops per sprinkler, and you're going to have to choose one or the other. And there can be multiple sprinklers inside the garden, but there's going to be at least one with 2 crops on it. So this would give you a 10% chance to actually get both harvests, which is obviously pretty good. And I guess what they said is Oshabi is just going to have a random chance to have the Heart of the Grove ready. inside there. So this gives you a twice as much chance to encounter her. Not that I really want to fight Oshabi again, but there seems like another harvest node up here that gives you 200% increased experience and 50% chance to spawn additional monsters per plant. So this would probably make it... This would be like a pretty good leveling node that you'd probably rip out later. Bumper crop. Double bonuses to item quantity rarity. There's just a ton of like really good stuff. The Delve one is crazy. Guaranteed Sulfite just for completing maps in that region. 10% chance to gain double Sulfite, and then all Sulfite veins have 20% increased Sulfite. Just strong, right? And every skill tree is different. So there's going to be merit to upgrading all of these depending on what you actually want to do. I'm pretty excited for this. This really feels like something the Atlas has needed for a while. To really be able to sort of trend your Atlas towards certain mechanics, like if I really want to farm Incursion or I really want to farm Legion. It gives you some things to work towards. And they've also added... This seems like a really late game thing, according to them, but they've added a new tier of Watchstone. This one's actually craftable. And according to Chris, this is super late game. Like, so basically you're going to be finishing your Atlas around Awakener 8 Cyrus level before you even start thinking about these. But they're basically craftable, tradable Watchstones. And they're specific to certain regions. Like this is a new Vastier Watchstone. And it's always going to be a new Vastier Watchstone. But you can roll them like any other magic item, and they've all got different modifiers for the region. Like this one has 23% increased chance to include a Mariketh army in every legion. And obviously you get 4 Watchstones per region, right? So if the numbers seem a little bit small, just remember that you get 4 of these, or you can have up to 4 of them. This seems pretty cool because it just sort of further feeds into this idea of like, I really want to focus on, say, Legion or Breach or something, so I can just try to trade for or craft these Watchstones that have even more Breach modifiers, right? And it seems to be there's 3 tiers. This is the lowest tier, I think, and then this is tier 2 and tier 3. This is that Maven's Orb. This is the thing that drops specifically from Maven, just like the Awakener Orb from Cirrus. This seems like a really endgame crafting thing. Like this is even more endgamey than an Awakener Orb. But it does seem really powerful. I guess the gist of it being, if you have an influenced item that has 2 influence modifiers, not just 1. So it's got to have, like, this is a Warlord, so it would have to have 2 Warlord affixes. You use this on it, and it will delete one of the Warlord affixes, but then it will upgrade the other Warlord affix by 1 tier. And this works even if it's a tier 1. If it's max tier, and you use this, it'll gain a special tier that adds, like, a really powerful hybrid affix to it. And the example they use in the trailer is, like, the intelligence. I think it was the % intelligence modifier. And if you upgrade it from tier 1 to, I think they call it elevated or something, it gained +1 to all intelligence skill gems. And so if you think about it, you'll be able to make one of those and then take another influence item, make an elevated affix on that, and then smash them together with an Awakener's Orb. So people are going to be able to make some really disgusting items with this stuff. But it does seem, again, this is stuff that they're adding for the really top end of the Atlas to try and drive even more progression into the crafting and like really late game stuff. But it does seem exciting. People are gonna, between this and the fact that Harvest is coming back, people are gonna make some absolutely disgusting items. I think this is cool. They've also just added 11 new base maps to the Atlas. They mentioned a few of these, right? Dry Sea, Forking River, Frozen Cabins. The cool thing about the new maps is that they're using the Path of Exile 2 tile sets. So like these are made using the physical base rendering pipeline out of Path of Exile 2. You can kind of tell like how much better the shadows, like the shading looks on all this surface, which is basically what Path of Exile 2's campaign is going to look like. It's kind of a creepy dude. So this is pretty cool. I'm always excited to get new maps. We haven't had any in a while that I can recall, so. And then we have the League on top of that. So on top of all this stuff, which is going to take forever to try and figure out, we've also got the entire Challenge League. Thankfully, the Challenge League seems pretty straightforward to me. It seems a lot like a mishmash of Breach and Parandus, right? Like instead of a Breach hand, you're going to get one of these totems. And when you click it, it basically shrinks the map down, right? You're blocked off from everything outside of the ritual circle. And it's just going to spawn a bunch of mobs. And you kill the mobs, and you get, like, you don't have to loot anything, but you get Parandus coins, basically. And like if you look down here, it'll show you, it's called tribute, I guess. But that's the currency. Now there's going to be multiple ritual pillars per map, the way that I understand it. And every time you clear one, the next ritual thing in that map is going to get harder, but it's going to reward more tribute. And what you do is once you clear it, you can click the totem thing and open up this tribute menu. It's like a chest, but you have to buy the things inside of it with your tribute. So if there's something really juicy in there, maybe you have to clear 2 or 3 rituals to be able to afford it. And there's also this defer option. Like, let's say you're the lucky guy who actually gets a mirror or a headhunter or something, and you probably can't even afford it off of one map, right? It's, it costs so much tribute. You can click this defer item, and it's kind of like layaway. You pay 20% of the cost, but that item will get saved, and it'll show up on the next instance. So you can then pay again if you want to keep deferring it until, like, to keep lowering the price until you can afford it in whatever map. But you have to be careful with this, I think, because you're going to want to remember that, like, if I deferred this and then I run a next map and I forget that I deferred that thing and I don't defer it again and I don't pay on it again, it's going to disappear. Like, typically these chests are specific to the map or whatever zone it spawned in. So just remember that. If you defer a mirror, make sure you pay again next map until you've paid for it. Don't skip a map or it's going to go away. You're going to feel really shitty. They've also added some new base types, which I think you can only get out of these chests, they said. The base types here seem to be one of these, like, one positive, one negative kind of base types. Kind of like was Heist that had bases like this, I think. This one's got additional lightning damage per 200 accuracy, but you have 25% less accuracy rating overall. None of these 3 seem to be, worth anything for Freezing Pulse Totems, but it's cool to have more base types, I think. This seems really straightforward to me, right? This is going to be a heavy mapping league. You're not going to be running into Heist all the time. It is going core Heist, but it's not something you're going to be, like, inside of a separate game mode all the time. This is just in-map, adding stuff to maps, quickly looking. Apparently, this guy has 4 exalts and a headhunter in his... This is not going to happen. Nice image. But, I guess there's some vessels here. There's a way to, like, if you use a vessel in the map device, this will allow you to, like, absorb monsters from the rituals, and then you can basically add these back into a map. So you can, like, fill it with monsters on one map, and then you can add it to the next map, and the rituals in that map are going to have everything in your vessel. So, this is a way, just a further way to juice your maps, basically, to get more tribute, to get more experience, to get more loot. Between this and the core expansion stuff, like, this is going to be a super heavy mapping league, which I'm kind of excited for. I really enjoyed the Mayhem League, specifically after Heist, because Mayhem was literally just blasting maps that had, like, Double Beyond and 20 Harbingers on them over and over and over, which is a really refreshing change compared to Heist and just constantly doing contracts and stuff. It'll be nice to get back into maps, but with more variety. Like, Mayhem got a little bit overdone because you're just running Harbingers, at least if you were in the race. And then, so they're also doing an entire Ascendancy revamp. 3 Ascendants here actually got total reworks, like Deadeye, Inquisitor, and Elementalist, straight up overhauled. Every Ascendancy, though, is getting touched on. And we're going to have to talk about this for a while because they do preview the Hierophant here. And I got to say, not thrilled. I'm not thrilled with what's here. There's some cool things here, right? So they've switched the position of Illuminated Devotion and Arcane Blessing. This used to be here. They did take the Immune to Elemental Ailments where you have Arcane Surge, and they put it back at the end of the line, which is fair because it's probably the most powerful affix in this line. But the, like, gain Arcane Surge when you or your totems hit is now the 2-pointer. And it has 50% increased effect of Arcane Surge on you. So the effect of the buff is 50% stronger. which is nice because this line I think was too weak, especially this 2-pointer. But I don't think for Freezing Pulse Totems at least, this is enough to make me take this over what I was already taking. But it is nice to see, right? What actually got changed the most here is the totem line, and not really in a good way, unfortunately. I don't know what like they deemed me too powerful after getting a demigods or something, because apparently somebody at GGG thinks totems need to get touched. The first nerf here, which is a direct nerf, is Pursuit of Faith. Now this node used to have, well, I'll just show you. It used to have, it had the 100% totem duration, it had +1 totems, but it also had 6% increased damage per enemy killed by you or your totems recently. This was the stacking buff, right? So for 4 seconds, you get 6% damage for every kill. And this stacked really high while you were mapping. You also had 10% attack and cast speed anytime you had a totem up, which is all the time, right? So that buff, that stacking buff, is just gone. It's not on Ritual Awakening. It doesn't look like it was moved anywhere. They just deleted it. I don't know why. I think their idea was they moved it into Ritual Awakening, because this currently on live is 3% more damage per summon totem, and they bumped it up to 5. While you're mapping, I feel like that at best is a wash, and is probably still worse than the old Pursuit of Faith buff in a lot of cases, especially in high density cases, which is annoying because they just introduced a bunch of ways to juice density even further between Beyond and Breach and stuff like that. We don't have our stacking buff anymore for map clear. It's just gone. I don't get it. I'm not a fan of that change. They did add 100% increased totem placement speed to this node in its place. Now, before, Ritual Awakening had 50% increased totem placement speed. And that's gone off Ritual Awakening and moved here, and they doubled it. However, the 10% attack and cast speed is also gone from here, and it makes me think that these two minors are probably changed. These used to be 20% mana regen and 20% totem placement speed, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me for them to want to like buff this from 50 to 100 and still leave these with totem placement speed. So my guess is they took that attack and cast speed and they moved it between these two minors. So these are probably 20% mana regen and 5% attack and cast speed. Maybe still only if you have a totem, which would be fine for us. And that's my hope. Because that basically what that would mean is that we go from 90% totem placement speed when we got to here, and we just get 100% as soon as we get to Pursuit of Faith. So it should make the totem gameplay, if you want to focus on totems, it will be smoother as soon as you get your first lab done. Because before, you'd get Pursuit of Faith and the 100% increased totem duration and stuff, but going pure totems still didn't feel great until you got here. Once you got here, everything was different, right? This was a huge, you would just blast as soon as you got Ritual Awakening. It seems like it's going to be a lot more of a steady curve now, where you're going to get a pretty good bump from Pursuit of Faith right away, and then you won't get as much power from Ritual Awakening anymore. The big change here, though, you probably noticed, is that Ritual Awakening does not allow you to drop 2 totems at the same time anymore. This sucks. I don't have any better word for it. This is just trash. I don't know why. I genuinely don't understand the logic here. My guess is that they want multiple totem support to be a more equal opportunity cost between Hierophant and the other classes that might play totems. This is still just a junk way to go about it, and I kind of hope that this is either an error or they go back on it or something. This sucks, because ultimately what it means is that we're going to be way more pressured to actually run multiple totem support in our main damage link. Now, I'll show you an example, like on this. This is just my default like high-end example. This isn't my heist character or anything, but it's still a pretty strong setup. This is 3 million damage per totem in this high-end setup. This is with Frostbomb and multiple totems. We probably wouldn't run Frostball on multiple totems anymore if we wind up putting multiple totems in our main line. But if you look, this is just with increased critical strikes. If you're at a really high-end setup, you might actually be running in power 4 here. But I think when I built this setup, I ran +2 to socketed projectile gems in this POB. So I wouldn't really run in power 4 in that. But if you look, if we just switch to multiple totems here, you can see that we go from 3 million per totem down to about 2 million per totem. But we'll have 6 Freezing Pulse Totems instead of 4. All that means is that this is slightly worse, just barely, in terms of single target than increased critical strikes. But it's spread over 6 totems, so my average hit per totem is way weaker, right? Currently in the live game, I would just drop 2 totems already, and they would each do 1.16 on average between both totems. So my first hit, right, your first strike after you drop a totem is tanking. We're losing a ton of damage off this. Now our single target overall, as long as 6 totems are down, is roughly the same. But if you think about it, there's no upside to this, right? Because first off, increased critical strikes is a bad gem. Like, I don't even want to run this gem. It's just that Freezing Pulse Totems has garbage gems. Like, we're just digging in the dumpster to find a 6th length, basically. It's already terrible. And so now there's even more pressure to consider running multiple totems. And this is slightly worse. This is slightly worse than increased critical strikes, which means this gem is probably something like 20 to 21% increased damage with no upside other than, I guess, the fact that you could cover 3 angles of totems instead of only 2. This doesn't matter. Furthermore, the mana multiplier on this gem is vicious at 150%. My mana cost is 204 per totem drop compared to like 154, I think. 156 with increased crit strikes. So this is like a 30% mana hike on totem drops. I don't really know what to make of this, honestly. I just feel like this is a mistake. So in the grand scheme of things, right, this is not a dire nerf because you're still going to be able to get enough. Like, we had a lot of clear speed to spare, right? Our clear speed was okay as far as totems go. We are going to get more single target back out of this because this old stacking buff from Pursuit of Faith, it didn't do anything in boss fights, right? There's no like ads to kill most of the time. So going from at 6 totems, we used to get 18% more damage. Now we're going to get 30. So we're going to get 12% more damage in that multiplier from Ritual Awakening, which is nice, but we're paying a pretty hefty price in clear speed. And there is no spell totem build in this game that needed a clear speed nerf. None. It's just ridiculous to suggest that. So I just don't really understand what's the receipt that justified this, you know? It doesn't make totems really any smoother to play other than the fact that you're going to get this earlier. But there's such a small consolation prize that, like, yeah, totems will be a little bit easier to play between Act 3 and Act 7. Like, who cares? You know? That matters so little in the grand scheme. It's not really going to hurt our single target. It's obviously going to get a little bit better. But losing such a large chunk of early clear speed like that, I think is going to have some pretty negative consequences in like the white to yellow map range, as weird as that sounds. I definitely, I don't want to like bug out too much because we want to wait until Tuesday and see the patch notes. It's very possible that we see changes to something like Ancestral Bond or even the multiple totem support gem itself, which I think would be justified. This gem is so bad at being a primary damage link. There's got to be some reason that they decided to do this to Hierophant. Because it's definitely not like, oh, he was too powerful, we better nerf him. Like, Hierophants were not lighting up the charts exactly. So we'll see in the patch notes if there's something in the patch notes they haven't shown that better justifies what we're looking at here. But this is basically a nerf, and there's no buff here. Like there's a single target buff, but there's no like actual meaningful buff here to offset how much clear speed is missing from this image. We'll know more on Tuesday. It's not going to kill the build or anything, but it's just one of those things where you kind of look at it and you're like, why did you do that? I want somebody to explain to me why you did that. The Divine Guidance didn't get changed at all, which is fine. It's a really good node. Conviction of Power did change pretty significantly. It's not a change where like we should be excited or upset. It's just different, right? So this used to generate power and endurance charges when you summon totems. You had half of the chance to get an endurance charge, basically, that you did power charges. But you got power charges very, very consistently. Well, now this grants you +4 to minimum endurance and power charges and gives you +1 maximum, so you can actually hit that. Because if you're not aware, like maximum charges takes precedence over minimum. So if it didn't have this +1 to maximum, your default maximum is 3. So +4 to minimum would still leave you with 3. But basically, taking this node means you just have a permanent 4 endurance and power charges that don't ever come off. But you also like can't spend them, right? This means you can't like switch to a Mortal Call. Mortal Call can't spend those minimum power charges or those minimum endurance charges. So it's still a good node, and it's certainly a little bit more convenient if you're not doing something like a Mortal Call. They're just going to be up all the time. The problem is that we lost the other 2 affixes that were on Conviction of Power, which give you 5% reduced elemental damage taken whenever you have at least 1 endurance charge, which is basically all the time, and then 5% damage penetration or elemental penetration whenever you had at least 1 power charge, which was definitely all the time. So these things are just kind of offsetting each other. I think I would rather have the 5% physical, like, or not the 5% physical, but the extra endurance charge on the physical side of things than this 5% reduced elemental damage taken. But it's definitely like a toss-up. We're more at risk from physical damage than we are elemental. Even though there's more elemental damage on average. And then losing 5% elemental penetration versus 1 extra power charge probably actually favors the penetration, but it might be a wash. I'd have to look. Whatever the actual answer to that question is, it doesn't really matter. It's just super minor. So ultimately, this change is neat, and it will be kind of convenient to not have to like spam totems just to like try and get an endurance charge before, you know, say you go up and fight Veritania or something. But it's just whatever. Ultimately, yeah, it just doesn't. At best, you would call this a complete wash. Nothing got more interesting, and totems just got more annoying to build into, because there's a lot more pressure to run a multiple totem support, and that gem sucks. You know, there's no other way to say it. That gem is bad, and we don't want to run it. And now they're like, well, instead of giving you more totem support gem options, they're just going to further push you into running one that already sucks. I definitely want to see some changes, or just something in the patch notes that better justifies what I'm looking at. I'm not very happy about this change. They also show off a few. There's obviously going to be some uniques that are only from this new Ritual League. You can look at these on the website yourself. None of these actually looked interesting for totems or anything. This one here seemed kind of neat for some potential Wither Ignite builds. They're kind of leaning into some more hybrid damage type stuff. This Trinity support gem is basically a gem for people that are specializing in more than one elemental damage type. So they're kind of pushing you towards making hybrid damage builds, which is neat. This is probably the best thing on this page. A new div card, a 2-stacker with 20 Orbs of Alteration. That's just amazing. This is like my favorite thing on the whole page. What was this one? A double influenced 2 implicit corrupted league specific item. Yeah, okay. I like how they drew a headhunter on this image. Like you will ever get a headhunter from this card. Obviously that's the dream, but yeah. And then they mentioned that both Harvest and Heist are going core. I mentioned earlier how Harvest is going core. Heist is... It seems like Heist is just kind of going core, but the rogues are going to level up a lot faster just because you're going to have less contracts. Markers are going to drop more, so you don't have to farm as many markers. And I guess quest contracts always drop from smugglers' caches if the quests are available. That part I was a little bit confused about. They're neat, but they were also the most pointless contracts because there was no rewards to them. Like, they cost you markers to run, but they don't give you any markers back. So they're just like bad contracts. They're neat from a lore perspective, I guess, but I really wanted to see some more addressment to the boss contracts that even after playing a ton of Heist, I never saw. I never saw the Twins contract. So hopefully there's something about that in patch notes. And they've obviously always got a couple of new supporter packs for every league. You can check those out yourself. All told, I'm actually really excited for this league. I'm jonesing for some Path of Exile. And this seems exactly what I need, right? Just a super heavy mapping league with just way more to do in the Atlas. Leveling up all the different region skill trees and just, farm till you drop, right? And then the league, I just like that the league is really straightforward and simple. It just seems like the perfect timing for this kind of stuff. The only thing is bugging me is this. I don't know, cross your fingers. We'll know more on Tuesday. I'm sure I'll make another video, and I'll probably stream the patch notes if you want to stop by. But yeah. I think, one thing I can do here, I actually did earlier. I set up my Heist character. I set him up to sort of see what it would be like to run multiple totems as a primary link, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, not much is changing in terms of Hierophant power level other than this change. So I can kind of just get an idea of what this feels like right now. Bear in mind, my Heist character is juiced. This character is buff. This is probably the best one I've ever had. I was super loaded this league. It was pretty disgusting how much currency I farmed this league. But we can still run multiple totems in the primary link to kind of get an idea of what this would feel like. We'll grab this random. I made this candy map earlier for this, and we'll put Delirium on it too. I've also set Frostbomb to be self-cast again, because we're already running multiple totems on the main link, which means there's no longer any advantage to running Frostbomb and multiple totems if you do that. You still would have 6 maximum totems, even with multiple totems on both of them. So you would have to go back to self-casting Frostbomb, or if you want to do a trigger wand, trigger a socketed spell when you use a skill, you could move Frostbomb to there or something. This is just set up with increased duration, spell cascade, and increased area of effect. Just gems I bought off the vendor. I ran a couple of maps like this already, and frankly, it doesn't seem like it's gonna be a big deal at the high end. And I'm just hoping that there's even more in the patch notes that sort of helps me make sense of these changes. But yeah, I mean, it's not a huge nerf overall. I'm just worried about that sort of mid-range progression level where, ouch, where we're not going to have as much damage, right? We're not going to have this level of gear when we first get into white maps and stuff. And having to run multiple totems, which is another less multiplier, I think is going to feel weird for map clear. I'm definitely concerned about this. So hopefully we see something in the patch notes. But as you can see, it's not like this is a struggle or anything, right? It doesn't feel particularly different at this level of damage than this used to. But it's definitely worse, right? Each set of totems I'm dropping is doing less damage. And I have to have 6 of them down. I mean, stuff is still going to die pretty fast, though. We can probably even do the Metamorphian Delirium. I don't know what I'm adding. Hopefully it's not terrible. Yeah, so, it's fine. I really just want to know why. You know what I mean? This is one of those, weird nerfs that feels hard to explain, I guess. But like I said, the build is not going to die. I'm not thinking about League starting something else because of this personally. But I'll know for sure when patch notes come out very soon. I think that I'll just wrap it up here for now. I don't want to get too carried away ranting about these weird Hierophant changes, because I am very excited about playing the League, make no mistake. I will be back. I will probably upload my next video when patch notes come out. I'll also be doing a live stream for that. And then, of course, the actual League start, which is this next Friday, the 15th. If you want to find me when I'm streaming, it'll be Twitch TV/Wallach TV. And I'll put a link in the description to the webpage for the expansion if you want to watch the trailers or go back and watch the live stream they did today for that stuff if you want to see more detail about it. Anyway, guys, I will catch you on Tuesday, and hopefully we have some good news. Until then, peace.